We know a little bit more about when Joe Burrow will have surgery to repair his turf toe injury while the Bengals are looking to get out to a 3-0 start. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow. He's James Rapien, and we've been covering your Cincinnati Bengals here on Locked On Bengals collectively since 2016 through the ups and the downs. And, well, we're enduring a shaky period here with the Cincinnati Bengals as Joe Burrow is set for surgery on Friday, assuming that swelling in the toe and foot allow for that surgery to take place. We'll break that down first here on Locked On Bengals and what would otherwise be a game preview episode. So we will get to the Bengals Week 3 game against the Minnesota Vikings after we get through the news on Joe Burrow. Welcome back to the Everydayers. Welcome back to those of you who make us your first listen. We appreciate all of you very, very much. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, where you can bet $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And James, we got news just before we started recording, really, about when Joe Burrow's surgery is scheduled, and kind of gives us some hints about why it took until Thursday, as we're recording this, to learn that the surgery would be likely on Friday, which may be when you're listening to this out there.
Yeah, and hopefully it is. Hopefully they can get it done, and it's good news. Look, I think the expectation early in the week was for Joe to hopefully get this surgery done Friday. I was a bit surprised Zach Taylor didn't want to give any insight on Wednesday about that, because I know behind the scenes that was sort of the tentative plan for a while now. But you mentioned it. The swelling is something that they're hoping is at bay enough for them to do the surgery and make it successful and do everything they need to. If not, it's going to happen early next week. It obviously matters a little bit. I don't know if it matters a ton if that extra few days, but it would be better to get it done Friday and get the rest part of the recovery out of the way so he can start recovering. And I think that's what's so interesting is about this week is on Monday, it sounded like he was going to talk to the media. On Tuesday, it's a closed day to the media. Wednesday, I was down there, and I think at some point during that time, his mindset shifted from, man, I could be out for the season, to, oh no, I'm going to get back. And I don't know that. I'm speaking for him, and probably that's unfair, but I do think that what I've heard is number 9 has his mindset is completely on coming back at some point this year. Obviously, there are a bunch of factors that go into that, but for him, that mindset is that. And I think that's interesting because a few days ago, I said it, you said it. It was like the calendar year and in not necessarily the season. Maybe he could come back in January, and you got the national talking head saying a minimum of 3 months. And I think Joe is like, minimum. I'll see you in December. I don't know if that's going to happen, of course, but I think that's where his mindset is right now, which is encouraging because, well, at one point this week, people were comparing him to Andrew Luck, and that's just not the case. He's thinking about getting back and when he can get back on the field.
Yeah, I've never really liked that comparison.
I hate
You
it.
point out the hits and the sacks and stuff, and it's just like Andrew Luck took everybody by surprise. Even if Burrow were to end up in that spot, it would take everybody by surprise. Like, the guy is driven to get back on the field and does everything he can in all of these injuries to get back as soon as he can. We know about the mentality for Joe Burrow. So I don't know. It's just something that I think people would like to be a story, and who knows? You never know if those things come to fruition or not. But we've talked a lot about the recovery timeline, James. I asked my own physical therapist about this that I've been working with for my own stuff. He said typical return to play timeline for a professional athlete in a surgical case is between 14 and 15 weeks, but that's with a bit of an immobilization period that, if you've looked into the rehab, there's that immobilization period, then a restoring range of motion, and then getting into impact and strengthening of the repaired structures. And then weeks 10 to 14, according to my physical therapist, is where you start getting to that return to play part of the rehab process. And I know you talked to Dr. Brandon Bowers, a guy that we've had on before to talk, unfortunately, about Joe Burrow injuries, among others, about what that timeline could look like as well. And you asked him how long it could take.
be real with us. What are we looking at here if Joe Burrow has surgery in the near future when it comes to his recovery, given that it's not his plant foot, but it is serious and it's a grade 3? Can he be back this season? How realistic is that?
Yeah, James, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I think the 12 weeks that we've seen from the national pundits all across ESPN and other outlets, if everything goes perfect, I think 12 weeks can happen. If there's any sort of hitches in the giddy up or snags along the way, I do think it takes a little bit longer than that. I think the Bengals also have to consider as they get later into the season to a week 16, 17, and 18, what their playoff picture position is. And is it worth it if he's close to ready or good enough to be ready to play? Is it worth it to trot him back out there if they're on the cusp of the playoffs? But I think 12 weeks at minimum is accurate. I do believe it may take a little bit longer than that, but a lot of factors to weigh in here.
It sounds like it's realistic to think that Joe could return at some point this season, assuming the Bengals are playing meaningful football. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. Again, to the point that I made earlier, I think over the next 12 weeks, the timeline that was given initially, I think everything needs to go right for him to have a chance if the Bengals are playing meaningful football. If there's any sort of setback in his rehab or something gets worse or something else flares up, then I think that 12-week timeline is out the window and we can put a bow on Joe Burrow's 2025 season. But if everything goes right, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. I think the chance is just very small.
So a couple of things there, Jake. One, they have to be in it. That's the first thing. When we shift to Sunday, and we're going to talk about Sunday's game for most of the show, that's a big part of it. Is you're going to have to win games with Jake Browning and without Joe Burrow. But even if it isn't, let's say December 20th, and instead it's January 1st, if they're in the playoffs or close to it, and that would be the perfect ideal world, I think at some point in that range, knowing Joe, noting that his dad a bunch of times has talked about how fast of a healer he is, and just knowing that he's going to try to do everything he can to come back, I expect to see Joe come back and them activate him on that IR window and he starts to practice. Now, it doesn't mean he'll play in games, but if they're in it, I think we're going to see him try to ramp it up and try to play, even if he isn't 100%, because that's just who Joe is.
Yeah, and another thing you talked about with Dr. Bowers that you can go check out on the Bengals Talk YouTube channel is the possibility of that carbon fiber, carbon steel, whatever it was, like the shoe insert essentially that takes away a little bit of flexibility in the toes as a protective option. And that could be something that they explore as well. It's something that I've speculated about them trying to do something to provide a little bit of protection in the foot. But you talked about the mentality, and let's shift there before we dive into this game specifically. The Bengals need to stay in it to have Joe Burrow return even matter, right? And so when we talk about Jake Browning and the veterans on this team for the next 12 to 15 weeks or whatever it is, starting from when Joe has that surgery, hopefully on Friday, you're talking about a game in Minnesota and then a tough stretch that we've talked about in the early part of the schedule. You get the 2-0 start, so you get a little bit of cushion there, but you got to keep winning games, right?
For sure. And I think that is their mentality. I've been kind of blown away by really everyone. I mean, you've seen it and everybody's seen the Zach Taylor press conferences, whether it was Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. There hasn't been one time where he's flinched. And I don't think this team has either. And not that they don't know that Joe is the franchise and all the things, how valuable he is, but I think it's a mixture of confidence in Jake, belief in their team, the fact that they're 2-0 for the first time in a long time, and they've made plays when they've had to have them in those got to have it moments, which builds confidence, and they're 2-0 with a +5 point differential, right? And it's I think they got a lot of confidence from the other day of being able to overcome the Burrow injury, finding a way to beat Jacksonville. And so we'll see. But it's not like they're down in the dumps right now. They believe they can win Sunday and win moving forward with Jake Browning.
And a lot of that does start with Jake Browning, with the offense adapting to not having Joe Burrow out there, finding ways to leverage the star playmakers on this team, finding ways to get the run game out of the cellar. I think that's going to be part of this coaching staff's challenge this year as well. The worst run game in the NFL through 2 weeks by several stats. So let's shift gears here, James. Let's talk about this matchup with the Minnesota Vikings and Jake Browning making his first start of the 2025 season, which will be the first of several at the very least. We'll get to that game coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP. Who delivered? Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. And obviously for the Bengals, Jake Browning came off the bench and delivered 21 of 32, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have the 3 picks, but guess what? He had the game-winning quarterback sneak, the tush push mid-air by Drew Sample, getting Jake Browning over the line for the touchdown. And look, when the pressure is on, Browning came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, the performance, well, it's something the Bengals are going to be banking on moving forward. And just like Browning delivered for the Bengals, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th.
We're also brought to you today by FanDuel. FanDuel has an awesome offer for new customers right now, and you can get started by taking a look at the Cincinnati Bengals Minnesota Vikings game this weekend. Make your judgments. Figure out how you feel about this game. Minnesota minus 158 straight up. They're given 3 points at home against the Cincinnati Bengals in a battle of backup quarterbacks. And maybe you want to wait and see what's going to happen with Christian Darrisaw in this game. But if you make a $5 bet, all you have to do, $5 bet with FanDuel. If that bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app, whether it's other games, other sports, same game parlays, alternate lines. FanDuel has everything you need to get in on the action. So if you're looking to make a bet, you're looking to play, get to FanDuel.com or check out the FanDuel app to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
All right, Jake, let's dive into this game a little bit. And obviously we have to start with Jake Browning. We have to start with this offense. It is going to look different. Zach Taylor has tried to pretend that it's going to be the same and feel the same. And we're not going to do that to our everydayers. And that's why you come to Locked On Bengals. The Bengals offense will 1000% look different. And I think you hit on the thing that really, really, especially with this matchup with the Vikings, has to change. They got to get this ground game going. They got to be able to run the football. Given what happened last week to Minnesota, this needs to be maybe not Chase Brown only game because they have those other weapons, but Chase Brown needs to have his best game of the season thus far.
And so does the offensive line and run blocking. Chase Brown,
that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it.
Huge, the part of it. Chase Brown has been good, probably not as good. He probably will look at tape and say there are plays that he wants back. There are probably plays that he thinks he could have made that he didn't make. I'm sure. Every NFL player probably feels this way. But the run game needs to come together, especially the right side of the offensive line. Dalton Risner, Amarius Mims, even Ted Karras this year. Those 3 guys, the schematics of it, the details of executing in the run game, all that needs to be better this week. This is a Minnesota defense that is led by a defensive coordinator that is going to create problems for you. Ivan Pace is going to come on blitzes. You're going to have to figure out where the pressure is coming from against stacked fronts, much the same way that we saw the Bengals deal with this against the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. And one thing that Jake Browning has been great at throughout his time with the Cincinnati Bengals is actually beating the blitz. So that's a fascinating chess match in and of itself this week, is how much, and Brian Flores is blitzing less this year, James, which is fascinating. I think this came up in the crossover as well. But Jake Browning, and this is also true against Jacksonville, has shredded the blitz, generally speaking, as quarterback when he's been in there for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's going to get rid of the ball most likely a little bit faster than Joe because he's not going to be looking to extend plays like Joe Burrow, and that's going to be one of the big differences in the offense. Getting the run game going obviously facilitates all of this. It can help you in the screen game. It can help you in the play action game. It can help you sequence things more nicely and put together a more cohesive offensive attack. But this Minnesota defense this year so far is underachieved. And they have some guys that can get after the passer in Hargrave, Allen, Jonathan Grenard, don't get me wrong. But the entire secondary, especially Harrison Smith, I think still questionable at best for this week. I thought he was still out this week, but looks like there's a chance he can get back out there. Like, there are matchups that you should like, and that's especially true if you can run the ball and Hargrave and Allen and Grenard and Turner can't just pin their ears back. Because as soon as you are one-dimensional against this defensive coordinator that is set up to pass rush with the guys he has at his disposal in his front seven, like that's where you get a little bit dicey to me if you're Jake Browning in this offense.
Especially with the noise, and the noise is such a factor, I would say. And so if you can, honestly, if you can do what they did on the opening drive in Cleveland, where you're clearly like, we want to establish that we're a physical team, and we're going to be physical. And I think that's what the Bengals are going to do. It's going to be interesting to see who's active and inactive. Something that we talked about before, like during roster cutdowns, was the Cam Grandy. Yeah. And I think this should be a Cam Grandy week. It would make sense to me. It would make a lot of sense that you go that route. And who knows? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out. But could he help you in the run game? Could that open things up a little bit? I think that the path to going on the road in a hostile environment against a good defense, even if they've underachieved, with Jake Browning, even with all your weapons, it's not going to look like Joe. Like, they would probably think if Joe were to go up against Brian Flores, like, all right, Joe, just go back there, diagnose it, and carve him up. Like, it is as silly as that sounds, I think that would probably work, and they'd feel really darn confident in that plan. That's not their plan this week. And so they're going to have to be more balanced, and you need Chase Brown to have an explosive run this week and efficient runs throughout the game, because one, he's one of your best weapons and you got to get one of your best players involved. The veteran told me that on Wednesday. I was like, is this the Chase Brown week? He was like, I hope so. He's one of our best players. And so that alone, like that, it is that simple. Like, even if Joe was quarterback, we'd be talking about, all right, well, how can they get Chase Brown going a bit more? So that is a huge, huge factor in getting this offense going, because if you do that, then I think Jake is going to probably get some easy throws early, build that confidence that he already has at a high level, but build it on the road, get into a rhythm. And then it's just going to open up this whole offense. And we know the layers of weapons. It's not just one or two guys, the layers of weapons they have if they get going.
Shout out Mina Kimes for this stat. That's where I heard this. Jake Browning, when he started in 2023 for the Bengals, had the 8th highest QBR, which is that ESPN quarterback rating, that alternate quarterback rating stat, the one that doesn't go up to 158.3 or 153.8, 158.3, whichever order of numbers it is, that weird number that's a perfect passer rating number. It's out of 100. And Jake Browning has produced when he's been out there. So while we know, and I don't know if this needs to be a bigger conversation in the future or not, James, I feel like this conversation maybe is beat to death. While we know that Joe Burrow is a significantly better quarterback than Jake Browning by every single measure, the Bengals have also shown in the past that they can keep the offense afloat with Jake Browning at quarterback. So I think that the big difference this time compared to the wrist, when one, we knew Joe was going to be done for the year, and it was like this unprecedented, crazy injury.
Mm-hmm.
And this time where one, there's hope Joe's going to be back, and two, we know what Jake Browning is. Like, I'm not saying that Jake Browning is going to go out there and set the world on fire, but he had some legitimately good games the last time he started for this team. Like, he legitimately had some high-end games of quarterback play. And he's going to be up and down. I think that's the nature of the drop off there, but he's a good backup to have. I still think that's true. Hopefully that works with the structure they have around him, because they've made it work with him in the past. And so for this team, for this coaching staff, with the weapons they have, Jake Browning has been able to produce in the past. Big question to the running game this week. That needs to get going. And you're right, we'd be saying that with either quarterback, because it's been a mess and it's been part of the major issue they're having on offense and in protection. The impact of the running game on all that stuff can't really be understated. But with the change at quarterback, of course, we're going to be watching very closely to see how Jake Browning reacts now that they know what to do with him, and they're not going to run him out there with that Joe Burrow game plan like they did in his first start against Pittsburgh in 23.
Right. That's exactly right. And they know what works. They know what doesn't work. And I think the offensive line knows too. And so I expect them run blocking wise, because they've been far worse, I think, run blocking wise than pass blocking, even
Oh
though
yeah.
with Joe hurt, everybody's focused on the pass blocking. I expect them to be much better run blocking wise. We'll see if they can do that. And there's plenty to discuss on the other side of things as well in this defense, going up against Carson Wentz. It's former number 2 overall pick Carson Wentz to you, Jake. Let's go. We'll get to that coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's serving your community for decades. These are places that bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. A couple that use Square in my area, the Park Pour is like my go-to wine place. The root beer stand, everybody in Cincinnati knows about the root beer stand. Shake Shack, T. Higgins's go-to. And Matry, I don't know if you've tried the new Matry Parks and Rec, but it's awesome at Summit Park there. So those are just a few of the many places that use Square. And Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedonnfl to learn more. That's square.com/go/lockedonnfl. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood.
Defense needs to make some adjustments, James. And I think rightfully so. If you go listen to the national shows this week, and this is the same thing, so hopefully you haven't listened to them yet, everyone's watching Christian Darrisaw's status at left tackle. Obviously, you got a backup quarterback out there for Minnesota. Obviously, Justin Jefferson exists. You got a backup running back who they're very confident in. But that offensive line has been a problem for Minnesota. Left tackle has been a huge problem for Minnesota through 2 games. Their center is also in concussion protocol, something worth watching as well. But if Christian Darrisaw gets back, it is hard to overstate the difference between Christian Darrisaw at left tackle, even coming off the ACL MCL injury, and whoever the Vikings' third left tackle option is. You go from a Pro Bowler plus to a guy that's going to be absolutely drowning against Trey Hendrickson. That one is a huge, huge deal for this specific game. Before we talk about, some of the adjustments I'm hoping to see from Al Golden, that is potentially a game swinging injury status to watch at the Vikings left tackle spot.
For sure. And this is the Trey Hendrickson ante up game where you're going to ante, you get yourself some 4 sacks or so. He leads the NFL in pressures right now with 14, according to PFF. Get that to like 24. Like just wreck this game. Just get so many pressures and have a couple TFLs and 3 sacks. Like this could be that type of game. And I'm not calling Trey out here, but I will say take advantage of this, because remember last year when we were talking about Fred Johnson?
I don't want to talk about it, James, but I do remember it.
And we were saying the same thing. Like I'm having deja vu. We were like, man, Trey should be able to eat. All right, man, go eat. You didn't eat that day, and it was a weird game. Fine, whatever. And who knows? I don't remember exactly what happened. I just know he wasn't super productive. Change it today or on Sunday, because I do think if the Bengals win in our post-game report, we're talking about Trey. Like no Shamar Stewart. We'll see who else can get pressure, not banking on someone to emerge and just be this dominant force. It's got to be Trey. And so there are going to be a lot of eyes on number 91. And the Vikings know he's coming, but he's got to be inevitable, especially with backups guarding it or backups trying to block him.
Yeah. I think that is a massive deal in this game, especially when you consider Cam Taylor-Britt had to leave practice Wednesday. That on the injury report is a hamstring, reportedly not at practice on Thursday as we're recording this. He was not spotted by those who were watching the warm-up portion of practice, James. And if the Bengals are down a corner in this game, that, the Vikings run game is going to certainly matter. But Justin Jefferson is the highlight for the Vikings on offense. Justin Jefferson will get open. Carson Wentz is a capable quarterback who probably will give you chances, right? But you're dealing with, again, good weapons on the other side, and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson stand out in particular. I think the Vikings have a ton of confidence in Jordan Mason at running back, even though Aaron Jones is out. I do think that matters, but they still have some skill guys on that side. And if they can't hold up in protection, we've seen that Al Golden isn't getting his defensive backs into the most advantageous positions, especially on third downs. And he took responsibility for that in his comments to the media earlier this week, saying that he needed to put guys in better positions, especially on third downs. And I'm thinking of a number of DJ Turner plays last week where from the jump, DJ Turner has no chance because of the defense that's called. And then it looks bad for him because he's a couple steps behind on a crosser or something, but he's doing his job. Essentially, it's just that the defense got out schemed on a play. And so I do think that, pass rush aside, that's a great equalizer, right? Like if somebody can step up in this pass rush, which we really haven't seen enough signs of, then it can help take some of the pressure off of the back end and take some of the pressure off of Al Golden having to be right on every single play. But the way it's gone, when they haven't been able to get that pass rush home, all these beaters that other teams are running, because they kind of are getting a feel for what Al Golden wants to do on defense, and that'll continue to evolve a little bit, but got to build some more answers in for that secondary because they're being exposed a little bit right now when you're not in the perfect call for the situation because your pass rush just, you got 3.5 seconds, somebody's going to uncover.
Yeah, and you have the second best receiver on the planet for my money in Justin Jefferson that you have to deal with. You have a guy in Adam Thielen that is just ageless. I mean, he's still being a high-end player that can be productive. I mean, there are guys like you said, Hawkinson, he's looking to get out of his slump. He started the season really slow, and that's a big thing in the fantasy community, and it's a big thing in Minnesota. And that's what I think is interesting about this matchup overall is if you can kind of keep Carson down and build a little confidence early that way, that would be huge because there's a group, and we talked about this yesterday on the crossover. There's a decent group of Vikings fans that think, oh, Carson Wentz, he's going to be better than what JJ's been outside of that one quarter of football. 1 out of 8 quarters has JJ McCarthy been really good. And so now that he's hurt, could Carson Wentz be an upgrade? He's productive early on. It's going to get the crowd into it. Everyone's going to buy in. And you don't want that. I mean, we saw it with Jake Browning last week. He throws that ball to Mitch Tinsley. Tinsley makes a play, and boom, just like that, this offense builds some confidence and is starting to really move the ball. Like that can go a long way. So that's something I'm eyeing early in this game, especially. But yeah, the secondary. Anytime you have to deal with Justin Jefferson, it's could be a long day, even if it is Carson Wentz at quarterback.
Especially when they're potentially down Cam Taylor-Britt. And I know Cam Taylor-Britt struggled in week 1, had a much better week 2. There's a reason that he's on the field instead of Josh Newton, right? I know that the leash was short after week 1, but he really responded. And so assuming that he's out, and it doesn't look great for him if he's missing practice on Thursday after potentially injuring that hamstring in practice on Wednesday, knowing what we know about how hamstrings work, that does matter. And so it kind of amplifies the pressure on the defensive line, the defensive front, because if Minnesota can, do the things Kevin O'Connell wants to do, run the ball, play action, get to those crossers, the cover 3 beaters, and Al Golden's playing a lot of single high coverages that are going to be susceptible to those crossers, need to have answers for those crossers, then it might not make the job hard enough on Carson Wentz to actually get him to make those mistakes because he is a mistake-prone quarterback. The last time we saw him in extended action, he put the ball at risk, according to PFF charting, turnover-worthy play percentage of 4.2%, career turnover-worthy play percentage of 3.5%. That is worse than average. And we've seen those opportunistic turnovers from this Bengals defense be a huge, huge deal through 2 weeks, in addition to drops from the opposing team and missed kicks and all those things, turnovers on downs that have been led to by drop passes and stuff. But in addition to those things, getting off the field in those spots, the interceptions have been massive for this defense. And they need to be able to put Carson Wentz in a position where he feels like he actually has to make a play. I mean, we've seen him since 2022 have a total of 55 dropbacks. He played a game for the Rams in 2023 when he was pretty good. Hardly played for Kansas City in 2024. Kevin O'Connell obviously has a relation to the Rams offense as well in terms of stylistic similarities and a good coach. So they're going to do everything they can, obviously, to put Carson Wentz in an advantageous situation. And the Bengals, and Al Golden's job is to put him in a situation where he does the thing that he's done in his career and put the ball in harm's way.
Yeah. Turnovers would be huge. I think the Bengals do feel like that Carson's going to give them a few opportunities. They felt that way going into last week's game against Trevor. It worked. It happened. We'll see if Jordan Battle can keep his streak alive. Can you imagine if he makes it 3 straight? That would be interesting. It would be. And so, yeah, you mentioned the drops, and instantly I'm like Justin Jefferson, Jalen Naylor, Adam Thielen. I'm just thinking like I expect those guys to make plays if they're open. Just do. And so you're right. And Jordan Mason is a really quality. He might be better than Aaron Jones in a lot of ways at this stage of his career. And so
I think Aaron Jones is still good, but yeah, I mean, maybe both of those backups are going to contribute more and produce better than the guys that were in front of them in this game. That would be totally believable.
And I love Aaron Jones in the passing game still. And it wasn't a knock on him. I'm just mean there might not be a huge drop off there, and you might have to deal with that. So huge test. I will say this: can someone on the interior step up and get some pressure? You saw BJ Hill in the second half of the Cleveland game. That would be that would go a long way, Jake. I think you get a little interior pressure. We've seen that firsthand,
especially if they're missing a center. Will Fries was the Fries, whatever his name is. He didn't become a Bengal, so I didn't learn it. Was paid a lot of money by the Vikings, has had a rocky start to his career in Minnesota. Donovan Jackson at left guard has been better in run blocking than in pass protection. So, I think this will be one of those games where, like I said, the Vikings are going to run it until they can't. But if you can put some pressure on them in terms of the game script, force them to throw the ball a little bit, find a way to make Carson Wentz a little bit uncomfortable, or change the picture on him, take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves. That's how you get out of this one with a win. Before you look ahead and you're like, man, yeah, getting to 3-0. If you want to believe in Joe coming back this year and having the opportunity to play some meaningful football this winter, that would be a huge shot in the arm in getting you toward that goal. If you think there's a chance that Joe can be back for those games and you want him to play in that meaningful football at the end of the season. We'll be back with you after the game. We'll have you covered from the Minnesota stadium in your case, James, and I'll be here. We'll have you covered with all those post-game takeaways, storylines, everything that happens on Sunday. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Who dey, and have a good one.